We are back, bashing the brain. Happy Monday. Willie, what a weekend.
What a weekend. I was so how many hours of wrestling did we watch? We saw from Friday with Max starting to all the way through last night.
Punches
Just
thrown at the MAC championship.
There were. It was funny because when you were watching the Mac, you had to watch one mat or the other. It wasn't like a quad box or anything. And the mat I was watching, you could hear the crowd. You know, the crowd was boisterous, but the mat I was watching, nothing was happening. So I was like, something's going on. And then all the people around that mat started looking over at the other mat. And it wasn't. Then I had to hunt down the other mat. And so they eventually showed the replay. That was crazy.
I know you're like me. You love going, especially to Big Tens, but I got to be honest, watching it at home and having all the screens, being able to crank out coverage and content and graphics is nice.
Yeah.
Going last night from Big Tens to ACCs to Big 12s, and now Monday morning being able to hop on a podcast is very nice.
It's there's a catch-22 there, You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. You want to be there. You want to be there in person. You want to be on the ground floor and get the inside scoop and what happened to this guy and what happened to that guy and let me know. And actually this weekend, I don't think there was a whole heck of a lot of that, like stuff that like drama that went on behind the scenes that you need to know about. So that was good. But by staying at home, you get to do every conference and watch everything. And, this morning I have an article up of every qualifier by weight, who hit the allotment and who needs wild cards. And I also have a by the numbers qualifiers by state from every state. There's no way that I get that done if I'm at a tournament. And there's no way we're sitting here able to do a show at 10 a.m. on Monday if we're at a tournament, So.
I know. And for those listening, I'm going to link that below because the articles and the content coming out this weekend was great. The coverage and all the allocations, and I'm going to link all that up. So if you're listening or watching this, I'll link right to it. I want to dive into the Big Tens, but before we do, I was exhausted last night. I mean, exhausted. I was like dozing on and off during the Big 12s. Yeah. But I was not going to miss David Carr. And I'm an early bird. So for me, like, I had to stay up kind of late for the UFC fight to watch Bo Nickel. Not really surprise anybody, but you had to watch that Saturday night. Last night, Big 12s, that 9 p.m. Eastern start time. Late for me. But that Carr O'Toole match.
Yeah.
David Carr is so freaking good. And I had said, I think with Chenzo early in the season, I said I'm picking Carr to win the whole year. Just, he's one of my guys, so there's obviously a bit of a bias. But Carr did so good last night. Did you watch the match?
Yeah.
I didn't think it was stalling at the end of the third. Did you?
No.
I don't think if one guy's down by one and sprinting and the other guy's just defending, you don't need two guys to sprint. I didn't agree with that call. But before I could even tweet about it, he took him down again. And that's one of those matches too. I think where all three of Keegan's points escapes. This is another thing where you look at the match and you see Carr 2 takedowns to none, and the score, it was 5-3 and he got the pin in OT, but David Carr is just beats him twice in a row, and
you think about it too. I'm not trying to put the cart before the horse here, but we could be looking at, I mean, the way it's tracking now, right? David led wire to wire in the first match with Keegan.
Yep.
Who was third and then first in the NCAs. And then in the second match, it got pushed to overtime, but he didn't feel threatened, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that it's a foregone conclusion that David wins in 2 weeks, but you look back, it's like, man, is the loss to Grant Willits going to be like the thing that prevented like history, right?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a David Carr I could not be more of a David Carr fan. I love the kid personally. I work on the Bash solution. So like I have the bias there, but he is just so good. And I always feel like when you have a good kid like in the Big 12 or not the Big 10, where you don't see those high caliber matches all the time, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of emphasis on them until the postseason. And then all of a sudden it kind of sneaks up. And it's like David Carr is just, 4-time Big 12 champ now, last one at Iowa State, Cal Sanderson. And we'll do a whole NCAA preview show, but looking at that weight, I lean towards a potential Carr O'Toole rematch in the finals. Yeah. Hamady looked awesome yesterday. We'll get there when we talk 65 at Big Tens, but yeah, crazy.
No, I'm with you. Now that being said, about non-Big Ten wrestlers and non-Big Ten wrestlers and their shine, it is true. But David has had his moments, including I think it was good for him and his brand. I mean, maybe that's something college coaches start looking at too, right? Is like to if you're not Big Ten and don't get the limelight all the time, schedule some premier duels. Even if you're a small program with one stud, schedule something to get all the attention on that matchup, right?
Same thing with Andrew Alira's. Some of these guys, non-Big Ten, just
like Andrew Alira's is elite. Like, get him a primetime matchup that everybody's buzzing about. I remember when, like, I think it was Stieber and Mitchell Port, and that was like the talk. I mean, that was like the big match of the weekend, I believe. So Little Edinburgh became like the focus for the country, but David Carr this year, at least right off the bat, he had Dean Hamidi, which was a big matchup at the time, right? David Carr coming up and Hamidi's there. And so he had a big one at the beginning. He had a big one at the end with O'Toole. And then he had another one with O'Toole last night. So, yeah, he's been in the papers. He's been in the headlines pretty well.
And I guess real quick, maybe we'll just do a Big 12 rundown real quick before we get into Big Tens. Panero Johnson, that horsepower at the end of the second for that double was unbelievable.
Yeah, he's good, man. He's good. I think he's just scratching the surface too. I don't know so in high school, he was always third. He took third everywhere, right? Took third or fourth everywhere. And so you saw, I think even a state tournament, I don't think he ever won a state title. But Super 32, Fargo, he was always way up there. And so I think he got overlooked a lot. And also in high school, he would sort of fade late, right? He would kind of gas. And it was almost like, so as an evaluator and myself looking at it as a prospect, and probably a lot of coaches too, they're probably like, well, I don't know if he got 7 minutes. I don't know if he's got that college life, he got those college lungs. You got to be about that life. And so after he beat Gomez in Florida, I was talking to somebody on the staff. I'm not going to say who because like HIPAA laws, right? But I was talking to somebody, so I don't want to say who told me this because whatever, people get on him or something. I don't know. I said, you know what, man? He wrestled hard for 7 minutes. I said, in high school, I was worried about him if he could, wrestle that hard in college. And the person said, Willie, let me tell you what happened. We noticed it in the room and we sent him for blood work.
We were talking about this. I think Dresser actually mentioned it when he was on my podcast a couple months ago. I think he mentioned it. Yeah.
Did he? So the kid had sickle cell anemia and they got it fixed. And now he's, he's incredible.
Right before Dresser came on the podcast, which is a great episode. Go back and listen to that one if you haven't yet. I was talking to David Carr about Dresser and saying, tell me some of your favorite things. Like, give me some discussion points. And one of the things he mentioned was he does such an incredible job at getting these guys bigger gas tanks. And he said, Panero getting a bigger gas tank. Carr was like, Dresser doesn't get the credit he deserves for expanding that gas tank. And now, like you're saying, there you go. If you're talking about Panero in high school versus Panero now, I mean, his horsepower late in the match, And exactly, the season played out exactly how I thought it was for Panero. Where we were talking about it earlier in the season, somebody got on me, or a couple people did, because I said Panero's a bracket buster. And I said he might not be a top 3-4 seed. And sure enough, before this weekend, he's a 10 seed with 4 losses, but he can absolutely go on a run.
Yeah, I think you're hitting it right. Like, if you have the horsepower that Panero does, most people with that kind of horsepower only have it for 4 minutes. If you have that for 7 minutes, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. What were your takeaways from Big 12s overall?
Let me look here. Alira's over Hart. So I'll just run down through them. Steve O'Toole won at 125 over Noah Certain. Reese Whitcraft wrestled really well. He took third. He was ranked 33rd coming into the tournament. Dayton won, of course. Zach Redding. Wyatt Henson actually took third, which is a really good bounce back for him. Alira's over Hart. Swiderski bounced back well, took fourth. He's been, I wanted to call. I like freshmen. I like freshmen. If you're talking about overperformers at NCAAs, and wrestling's a really hard sport. I often get asked, well, everybody gets asked, right? Who's your bracket buster? Who's your sleeper? Who's your this? Who's your that? Well, it's really difficult to pick upsets and sleepers and stuff in college wrestling because A, it's a one-on-one sport. There's only a limited number of factors. And B, everybody has access to the same data, right? So everything he did. You know who he beat, who he lost to, how he looked, how he performed, and so you have the data. The data's in front of you. It's like trying to lie about math because it's right in front of you. You have the data. But when it comes to picking upsets or sleepers or overperformers at a certain time, I like freshmen because I think they have a more of a learning curve. They have a more of ability to evolve over the course of the year. As in opposite of a veteran, right? Who's been the same guy for the last 2 to 3 years. So when you have a guy like Swiderski, that's a long way of saying Swiderski's had some up and downs, but I'm still really interested. I still think he can be a factor at NCAAs. Guys like Swiderski, guys like Panero Johnson, guys like, we saw it last weekend. Yesterday was Silas Allred, Lenny Pinto, maybe Caleb Henson. These are all guys that are in their first year of starting. And so I think maybe there's a little bit more upside and a little bit more chance for them to shock some people.
Yeah, I mean, when you talk freshmen, not to jump the gun to the Big Tens, but Jesse Mendez, both of his losses, he was right there. He got taken down in overtime, and then he got taken down like the final 20 seconds. But you're right there. Like that's, and he's true freshmen that are right there are so exciting to watch because they're only going to likely develop further. And when you're already that close, they're fun. All right, keep going.
Panero over Mahler. Mitch Moore actually wrestled well too. He took third ahead of Kalen March, who I considered. I think it's overlooked. Kalen March has had an excellent year. Franek at 57. Man, I don't know if it's too early to talk about seeds. I think maybe we should just go through everything that happened this weekend and then get to it in a different show. But 157 and 197, the seeds are going to be crazy. Although I will say 157, in my opinion, is a little bit more cut and dry than people think. But Jared Franek taken first. He should be a top 4 or 5 seed over Caden Gfeller.
Well, I think it's Peyton 1 or Levi 1, Peyton 2, O'Connor 3, Franek 4.
You can't help yourself. You got it. We have to jump to the next thing we have to do. We have to do the seeds already. What did you say you think it is?
I think it's Levi 1. He just took out Peyton Robb. I mean, he's only got one loss earlier in the season.
Yes, no shot. He's won.
So who do you put? O'Connor 1?
O'Connor's 1 guaranteed.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. O'Connor 1. And then what? Levi 2, Robb 3, Frantic 4?
That's what I would have.
Yeah,
I think that's. I
forgot O'Connor's undefeated. Yeah.
I think that's David texted me, Taylor, he's like, what do you think, Levi the 3? I was like, nah, man, I think the 2. Like, I don't know. Now, I could actually see, I don't know if I could see Peyton Robb still being the 2, actually, because Peyton's only losses to Levi. Levi's only losses to, I don't know. I haven't thought about it that much, but knee jerk, I would say AOC, number 1 seed guaranteed. Levi, Peyton, the 2-3.
Now, what about Josh Humphreys?
Josh Humphreys hasn't wrestled enough. He hasn't wrestled enough. The guy missed all of January and February.
But weird things happen with seeding committees. That's my point. He's undefeated. Yeah. That's the only. I mean, he had I think 12 matches before EIWA, so he maybe just hit 15. But
yeah, to me, if they would jump Robb and Levi with Josh Humphreys, that would be bullshit. That would be utter bullshit. I mean, what's Josh Humphreys' best win?
But listen, I agree with you. You just know there's going to be some kind of seeding chaos. Yeah. It's like,
Josh Humphreys' best win this year, he beat G. Feller 7-6. Ed Scott, he beat Ed Scott. And that's it. Or Anthony Artelona. I mean, nothing remotely. He doesn't have a top 5 win. And the thing is, Levi has a win over Robb. Robb has a win over Frantic. Frantic's only loss of the year. Loss of the year. Right. So I consider those 4 AOC, Levi, Robb, and Frantic the clear top 4. Humphreys probably 5.
Yeah, Levi Haynes is so weird because he's got great wins, but he has that funky November loss to some guy who's, 50th or something.
He lost to Vinny Zerban. Yeah.
Yeah.
He lost to Vinny Zerban. And, they say that losses aren't supposed to matter, but quality wins are. And it's not transparent. Sometimes they do. Let's be honest. Sometimes the losses do hurt, and I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll do a whole show for seeds, anyways. You had to go there.
It's so enticing. So then David Carr over O'Toole. Caliendo 3rd. Caliendo is really tough. A lot of people overlook him. North Dakota State. Yeah, he's not a household name, but if you're in some kind of pool for NCAA brackets, Caliendo's a nice late.
He's definitely the guy I was thinking, depending. I normally do that one. I was talking about it with Colin Moore last week, where it's you pick a 1 seed, you pick a 2 seed. If he's an 8, 9, 10, right. I like him a lot.
Right. If he's at one of those pools, that's what I was getting at. One of those pools where you have to take 1 seed each way. He's a nice guy to have. Dustin Plott over Peyton Mako. Plott's been up and down. Looks like he's right back on track. Keck Eisen over Coleman 6-2. Whitlake took 3rd. Elam over Sloan. What a crazy weight this is. Elam over Sloan. Serber took 3rd.
I love Rocky Elam.
So do I. But you know what? You know what I don't get about his season? I don't understand it. Something's not right, in my opinion. Because he lost to Serber, and if you look at his schedule, do you know that the Big 12s were the first tournament he wrestled in this season? It's just been a really odd year for him. Maybe he was dinged up, or maybe dare I say, it's a hard cut to 97 for him. I don't know, but
yeah, he only wrestled. He basically wrestled in 8 dual meets this year.
He wrestled 8 dual meets. That's what he wrestled. 8 dual meets. That's just a really weird year, for one of the
Well, so
established.
many and so many of these guys who sometimes fly under the radar, like Mason Paris was in that documentary on Big Tens yesterday, where he's talking about how he herniated his disc in his neck at the World Team
Yeah,
Trials or something. Like you never hear about some of these things until way
right,
later, and then it makes sense. It's like, oh, that kind of makes more sense now. Like, but you never hear about it in the middle.
right. Yep. That's for sure. That's for sure. I mean, and there's going to be, I guarantee you, there's some guys that got injured this weekend that we don't know about, and we won't know about it till it just kind of leaks out after the season.
Yeah.
And then Hendrickson won at heavyweight. He beat Sam Schuyler.
How do you? I don't want to do this, Willie, but how do you see the top 6 at heavyweight?
Well, I think it goes all Big Ten first. I think it goes all Big Ten. Probably Mason. They don't have any. The big 3 there have no outside losses, right?
Mason's undefeated this year. He definitely doesn't. Kirk has 2 losses, both to Mason.
Both to Mason.
Cassiope, I think, has a couple of losses, 1 to Kirk, or 2 to Kirk now. He had a weird loss earlier, I think. Who was it that it was just? I was looking at last night. I thought it was going to be Cassiope 3
losses.
Yeah.
Kirkfleet, Harris, and Kirkfleet. So I just don't. I think they're your top 3.
Yeah, and then I think Schultz gets to 4.
Maybe. Because Schultz has 2 really weird losses.
Because Lucas Davison, Wyatt Hendrickson, they all have a couple of like odd ones, but it's going to be interesting. Wyatt Hendrickson is a freak.
And he puts up bonus points too.
Yeah, he won first round yesterday. He's put up 16 points. Next round put up like 12 points.
Hendrickson's only loss is to Mason.
Yeah, that's why I think it's going to get interesting with him in the seeds.
I think he should be the 4, and then Schultz probably the 5, because Schultz lost to Dayton Pitzer and AJ Nevels.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Willie, one quick little fun fact for you, and you can respond to this however you'd like. I'm not teeing you up for anything.
I feel like you're teeing me up.
At the Big 12s and Big 10s, 19 of 20 number 1 seeds made the finals.
Yes.
What was the 20th?
I bet you that's hard to replicate.
Yeah.
That's incredible. 20 seeds, and they all won. 20 number 1 seeds at Big 10, Big 12. That's a good it's good of you to recognize that. That's crazy stat. And the only one that didn't win is Killian Cardinal, who was the 1 seed at 125 at Big 12s and didn't wrestle. He forfeited his first match, and then he forfeited his second match and didn't wrestle at all. And I know why you're teeing it up.
Well, you were fighting with well, I don't like that. I saw that you had said he should be punishing the seeds, which I personally agree with. I didn't like that then he came at you with the fat fan at home meme. And it's like, dude, This isn't necessarily a fan saying something. This is somebody who seeds and ranks and has a lot of influence with how things should be in that sense. And then I saw the director of operations tell you that you're clueless. And I'm like, well.
Yeah. Well, I think, I didn't appreciate Bradkey saying that. I'm clueless. Frankly, that's just ridiculous. Nobody's more dialed in than I am. I think that they read into it that I'm saying that he's trying to game the system. And you could read into it that way, I guess. But that's not what I was saying. I was saying I'm so tired of conference forfeits and it not affecting your seeds, because it almost, number one, it's bullshit. And number 2, it almost always plays out that if you're too hurt to wrestle at conferences, I mean, name me a time where a person was too hurt to wrestle at conferences, but then did good at the NCAA tournament. It never happens. The only time The only time it was that anybody did something like that was Nolf. And Nolf actually wrestled till the 6th place match, right? Or he wrestled a couple bouts.
Yeah. Nolf was also, Nolf's kind of an outlier when you talk about that situation where, like
Nolf,
you said,
Nolf also wrestled. Nolf also wrestled. Remember last year?
By the way, Nolf was also the favorite going into it. Like, Nolf is also like the number 1 seed. I'm pretty sure he was a returning national champ. Like, there's something, trying to protect that. And I get that every situation is different and I don't know everybody's story. But like you said, when like somebody was saying, do you think we see Kirk and Paris tonight? I'm like, absolutely. It was kind of an anomaly last year that Iowa didn't wrestle Cassiope and Ironman because they were banged up, and Iowa thought they had a better shot at the NCAA tournament. If they wrestled.
I have no idea why Cass didn't wrestle last year, but Ironman didn't wrestle. Ironman forfeited, and you know what? Ironman was really hurt. So you cannot say I'm really too hurt to wrestle, and then also say I deserve a top seed. Those two, that's like saying you're left and you're also right at the same time. You're either too hurt to wrestle, or you can't be a top seed.
Well, there is ambidextrous people, Willie.
Maybe.
But my point was, you didn't poo-poo him. You just said the seed should reflect this, which I don't understand why they got so bent out of shape of that.
The only thing I can think of is that they read into it that he was not really hurt and he was gaming the system trying to protect the seed. That's not what I was saying. What I was saying is I'm tired of guys forfeiting out at conferences. You cannot not wrestle a match at conferences and still insulate yourself from losses. It's really hard to lose a match when you don't wrestle, right? I mean, here's a clear thing of it. Peyton Robb could have defaulted. He could have forfeited his Big Ten final. Guess what? Number 1 seed, locked up. No question about it. No question about it. Locked up, number 1 seed. He hurt himself by wrestling that match. Maybe you could argue.
By the way, wasn't he punished for medical forfeiting? He was the 3 seed that year as the returning undefeated national champ.
Right. Yeah.
So, I mean,
but last year they didn't do it. Last year they didn't bang you. Last year they didn't hit you, right? So that's what I was saying. I'm tired of guys, and I don't know how they could argue with that, right? You cannot be 10-1, or you cannot be 10-0 or 10-2 with the medical injury defaults. You can't be 10-2 with your best win being a 3-2 win over Joey Prada and expect to be a top 10 seed. That is totally reliant on your rank, which is totally reliant on basically 2 years ago, because last year he didn't AA and last year he didn't beat anybody good. So you haven't beaten anybody good in 2 years, since 2021. March of 2021 was your last decent win, and you expect to be a top 10 seed 2 years later? I don't get it, and I don't know how they could argue against it.
The only thing that would make sense of why they were arguing it so much, I would think, is if he's quote unquote too injured to wrestle, but they think he'll be okay by NCAAs, and it's really not about seed. But what you're saying is it sounds like it's not that.
I think they think that I was saying he was trying to game the system. Yeah. And I'll tell you another thing. I'm not sure if he's even going to get it at large. I'm not sure he's going to get it accepted, because he doesn't have an RPI, and he doesn't have one thing. They look at RPI, they look at win percentage, and they look at wins against wrestlers in the field. He beat one guy that qualified this whole season.
Yeah. All right. Well, I was going a different direction, but you went that way.
Well, it's something to think about. And, luckily, sometimes people say, "Oh, Will, you rant and rave about everything, and everything's negative and stuff." One thing is, you didn't hear me ranting yesterday, because overall, forfeits weren't that big a deal yesterday. There wasn't many of them.
We were talking about it before we started the show. There really wasn't a lot of controversy, drama. And that's one reason why when you were saying like about when we go there and you're kind of getting inside scoop, this was a good year to miss.
Yeah.
Because there wasn't a lot of like chatter that you missed by sitting on your phone. There was a lot of, just good wrestling to watch. There wasn't a lot of drama. We'll definitely talk about 57.
I think at EIWAs there was only one medical forfeit.
There was
in a placing match, which is great.
And that was like a legit injury. That
was a legit injury. Yep.
Yeah. All right, let's talk Big Tens.
Oh yeah.
25, Spencer Lee show. He's just a different breed. He's Liam Cronin. He wrestled him like a dog. I mean, Spencer was tired at the end of that match. When Ray Flores went over to get him for the interview, he was like hands on knees. You don't see Spencer like that very often.
No, you don't. Not exactly sure what was going on there with Spencer. Why he looked tired. I mean, you never know. Maybe he's doing a periodization thing. Maybe he hasn't been on the mat. He just looked tired. I mean, I don't think he also looked like to me in the interview, like he was like, I don't want to do this interview. Stop asking me stupid questions.
I don't think a lot of the guys, I did the interview. The PRTC asked me to do it after they had their RTC card. And it's so tough because you're trying to come up with questions based on what you just saw. There's no processing time. And these guys are so tired. I always hate those interviews. Do them like maybe 3 matches later.
You do them, first of all, absolutely do them later. Let the guy catch their breath, regroup. The way the way it's set up is the guy just gets done with a dogfight, and even Spencer gets in dogfights once in a great while. You get in a dogfight, then they stick a mic in your face and ask you, even the part that I don't like is for the hardcore fans, the hardcore diehard wrestling fans want something
of substance.
They want something. Give me something I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the times when you get to Big Tens or conference tournaments and you get to NCAAs, the interviewer is asking questions that are broad.
Yeah.
And that want to appeal to generalization. Spencer, you've been through so much. Tell me how it's going. Jesus Christ. He's been asked that 4,000 times.
Yeah, it's also, I kind of put a pause on having college wrestlers on in between like the first half of March, because all the good stories always happen as soon as NCAA's end. That's when like the good questions, that's when, even last year with Spencer, it's like, that's when, or 2 years ago, that's when it came out, he's wrestling with no ACLs. Like that's when all the interviews now,
they're not going to tell you now.
They're not telling you nothing. It's very like, it's almost like PR training. There's, I got some things to work on. It went good.
Absolutely.
It's very PR because, like people are going to watch that.
I mean, who said? Spencer Lee said, I got things to work on. RBY said it all goes away tomorrow. I'm a Big 10 champ today. Doesn't mean anything tomorrow. Sammy Sasso said, I'll enjoy it for today. Back in the room tomorrow. Right. So they're just doing the PR thing.
Yeah. They've also had no time to process it either. So, but yeah, Liam Cronin looked great. Nebraska,
Cronin looked good.
You were very quick. You're very quick. That 5 for 5 went out quick with the JB tag.
5 for 5. I got to give you non-PSU stats. Get your attention. So one thing that's interesting about Cronin, and it just sort of highlights or accentuates the how tough Big Tens is. I mean, he was down big early to Braxton Brown, who ended up taking 9th. So you got to be, it's cliche, but you got to be ready for every match in Big Ten. So Cronin looked really tough. Ramos was 3rd. D'Agostino's have a really rough year as far as injuries and sitting out and being in and out and in and out. And
somebody
he had a
said that
really
about him medical forfeiting. I'm like, yeah, he medical forfeit because I think he legit is like so banged up. Like that
yeah
kid is just
right
like you said, all year he's been banged up.
yeah
That's not him trying to protect a seed. That's just him, I think, legitimately
yeah. I mean,
hurt.
there's guys that are legitimately hurt for sure. And like last year, Jaden Ironman took offense, and I never even said anything about Jaden Ironman. I said something about the numerous. I was going nuts on Twitter about the numerous. This is unacceptable. There's so many forfeits or so many medical forfeits, and Jaden got mad. Jaden, listen, I know that some of you are walking wounded. I know that I'm not calling you out, but I also know that some that aren't that banged up are sitting. And I know that the seating committee isn't going to factor it in heavily enough. I mean, if there were medical forfeits, I would never complain about medical forfeits if it hurt their seed if it counted as a loss. If I'm supposed to wrestle Justin Basch and I default, and in the official seeding criteria ledger, Justin Basch got a credit for a win over me, and I got penalized for a loss to Justin Basch. If that was the case, I would not even bring it up. But it's a way to insulate yourself. You can't lose if you don't wrestle. And so that's what I'm talking about. And a guy like D'Agostino, sure, we know he's hurt, right? But I also got a phone call, and I was talking to somebody, and they said, I just straight up heard a kid tell a coach that he wasn't wrestling in the wrestlebacks, and the coach was upset, and the wrestler said, but I have a win over him this year, so it's not going to matter for seeding. I mean, the kid said it with his own mouth. Yeah, that's what you can't accept.
And like you said, the funny thing is, I understand anything can happen. Anything can happen. But the times we see these gamifications playing out to win an NCAA title seem like it's pretty few and far between. Doesn't seem like there's a whole lot of gamification that results in,
Right. That's a great point. You should clip that out and put it on social media, because look at all the times that people try to play games, and then look at how it works out. It never works out, guys. It never works out. I say it all the time. Anytime, almost every time, I get an angry email about a high school ranking, almost every time, like clockwork, you can set your watch to it, that kid loses within 2 weeks to an unranked kid every time. It's like, don't try. If you're gonna win, it's gonna happen. Don't try to play games.
Yep. No, I agree. 33 RBY, 3-time Big Ten champ.
Yeah, I think the story there at 33 was, I will say Roman looked more offensive than I've seen in the past. I mean, maybe early in the season it was because he's just getting into his rhythm, right? He's not all the way back. But he really went and got things this weekend. So I thought that was interesting. And I think, I had a little bit of fear when Roman said he was coming back. I wanted him to come back so badly. And then he said he was coming back. And then it dawned on me, like, if you come back, it's hard to defend titles regardless. But when you come back and you're unsure, should I not? And then you do, you have to. Roman had to be 110% to win the last 2 years. Now, if he's 109%, can he still get it done over Dayton? And two things confirmed that he knows what he has to do. One is he was more offensive, and two is post-match interviews where he said it's gone tomorrow. I'm a Big Ten champ today. It's gone tomorrow. He knows that it's not going to be freaking easy, right? Yeah. So I think Roman's in a really good place. I thought that was one of the stories at Big Ten 133. I thought the other story there was Aaron Nagel, who beat Mendez, got into the
finals just after he had an OT win over Lucas Bird. So he beats the 3 seed and then he beats the 2 seed.
2 seed, yeah.
Back to back sudden victory wins for him.
Yeah, he's really tough. California kid. You could say, Minnesota wrestled relatively well. They got Nagel in, they got Blockus in the finals.
Yeah.
So it was a good day for those guys. But I thought Nagel was one of the stories at 133. Bird was third. Good job by him. He lost only the overtime match. Nagel came back for third. Cannon 4, Ragenson, Mendez, Teskey, Heilman was your placers at 33.
And I don't believe there was any medical forfeits at this weight.
No, nope, none.
Do you want to real quick? I'm not teeing this up. Is it Teskey? Anything you want to talk about?
No, that too. Iowa fans. I tweeted with Teskey didn't go in the RPI, or Teskey didn't go in the rankings, right? For the official coaches rankings, which made the Big Ten. The Big Ten earned 10 qualifiers at 133. They only got 9 because Brody Teskey was not in the rankings in what you can call a clerical error. Like he should have been in, he wasn't. So I tweeted about that and I talked about that, and it makes me angry because Big Ten should have been taking 10, and that means that Teskey's 100% going to steal a wild card spot. He's going to steal a spot, and then somebody else is going to need from the Big Ten, and then somebody from the smaller conferences is going to end up getting knocked out because of that. So I said what I said. That was last week. Then as the weekend developed, Connor McGonigal lost and was hurt. So he's definitely going to need one and definitely going to get one. As the weekend played out, things developed at 133 that said the Teskey thing is going to be a factor. There's too many guys at 133 that need a wild card that aren't going to get them. Somebody that earned an allocation is going to be left at home. So I tweeted that. And again, I felt like some Iowa fans felt like I was picking on Teskey and picking on Iowa. I don't blame Brody Teskey, and I don't blame Iowa. Not one bit. You can say that Iowa should have put him in the system. Okay, they made a mistake. It happens. What can't be allowed to happen, though, is there for there to be no NCAA oversight to correct it.
Yep.
That's all I'm saying. I'm not upset at Brody Teskey. I'm not upset at Iowa. I'm upset at the NCAA or the NCWA, who failed to have some sort of mechanism to say, whoa, let's get this right.
Yeah. Yep. And if you want a full in-depth discussion, Willie talked about that at length his last show, so go listen to that. All right, 41, Real Woods.
Real Woods looked real good. He beat Brock Hardy. I thought that was one of the best finals. That was fun.
Yeah.
Hardy almost had a takedown at the end. Real did a great job riding in the first period. I think, oftentimes, like I said about Nagel, oftentimes the story of the bracket, a story of the weight class isn't really the champ. And I thought Nagel was the story at 133. And I think probably Hardy is the story at 141 because he had just come off the loss to Izagari. He beats Bo Bartlett 2 takedowns to 1. And really the first takedown that Bo got the first takedown, and really Hardy messed up in that situation because Hardy was rear standing.
It was a great sequence for Bo.
It was a good sequence for Bo. So I thought Hardy was impressive in his win against Bo. I thought Hardy was impressive in his loss against Real.
Yep.
Or not impressive, but at least tells you there's a puncher. There's a chance, right? I mean, 141 is not. Real didn't blow him out of the water, is what I'm saying.
It's always fun, too, when you have a tournament like the Big Tens, which everybody calls like mini NCAAs, and it's such a tough tournament. And then you take a weight like 41, where now like that 1, 2, 3 of Bo and Brock and Real is so fun. Now add in Andrew Alirez. Now add in Cole Matthews. Now add in Ryan Jack.
Yep.
Cal Happel. Like, that is going to be a fun weight in NCAAs.
Yeah. Well, actually, Happel needs a wild card. Happel had a disastrous tournament. But you're right. Happel has beaten those guys, right? Happel's in.
I think
Happel,
he'll get a wild card.
He'll definitely get a. He'll 100% get a wild card. But see those. That's what the wild cards were made for. Wild cards were made for guys that are clearly in a tier. Austin Gomez, right? Yeah. Wild cards are made for guys like Austin Gomez and Cale Happel. They were not made. I don't know. It's frustrating sometimes.
Speaking of Gomez, 49. What an interesting weight.
49. Sasso takes it over Blockus. Gomez hurt, obviously, about a month ago. Comes back and he loses to Graham Rooks. And I just don't know. I don't know how banged up Austin Gomez is. And then he gets called for a slam. It's just there's so much to like unpack there.
Yeah, like I mentioned that after the Rooks match, he was limping heavily.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it wasn't as apparent during, once he started wrestling back. But, these are, again, I think the stories you're going to hear in 3 weeks. After NCAAs,
right.
You're going to hear what really happened.
Mm-hmm.
Gomez, he doesn't seem like he's 100%. He does. Nobody would have thought Gomez doesn't win a single match at Big Tens this weekend.
Yeah, I know. So, right. So he needs a wild card. That's crazy. I mean, there's 7 former All-Americans that need a wild card, including, Gomez probably top of the list.
And Gomez medical forfeited in the 9th place bracket, which I think shows how.
I want to talk about that. Once again, not saying I am not blaming Austin Gomez. He clearly hurt. Everybody knows he's hurt. I'm not saying he's just like Cardinal. I'm not saying he's gaming the system. I'm not saying anything. I'm talking about the process. Theoretically, Gomez is going to get a wild card. There's not a shot in hell he doesn't get a wild card. In that situation, he can medically forfeit, which he did, and the conference picks up another bid, right? The conference essentially picked up an extra bid because Austin Gomez is 100% getting a wild card.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I'm wondering how that, because there's 2 things, especially with Gomez. Number one is you have the medical forfeit, but you also have, whether he was injured or not, you now have a loss to Graham Rooks.
Mm-hmm.
So you now have a loss to a guy that I think he was like low 20s in the rankings. So it's interesting because that's like, he's definitely hurt, no doubt about it, but it's going to be interesting. To be honest, I really don't think he cares where he's seated. I think he's got to be a gauntlet of a bracket, and he knows it. You got Yanni, Sasso, Yaya, Parco, Murrin, Caleb Henson, Panero, all these guys. Doug Zapp took a loss yesterday, but he's always a hammer. So, it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do with Gomez. And you know what, Justin, what I would do, and it'll never happen. There's so many things that I would do that will never happen. And it's like, it's just a shame because I don't know how to express it other than it hurts my soul because it should happen this way to have something that you love. And I love wrestling that you can't control. It's out of my control. And it would be for the best, but you can't make it happen. It's just like
where there's a will, there's a way. There's a way.
This is what should happen. This is what 100% should happen. These wild card bullshit things. The wild cards are bullshit. What should happen is if they're going to go the allocation route, what really should happen is there should be like 5 regions. That's what should happen. But the conferences have pride, and I understand that conferences are important. That'll really never happen, having regions. But you have conferences, they do the allocations. What should really happen is you have the thresholds. You have the allocations, and they give all 33 out. Well, first of all, it shouldn't be 33. It should be 32. So they should give 32 out. Big 10 gets 10. You get 6. Big 12 gets 8, right? They should get, and you place what you place. If you don't place in that, you're out. I don't give a shit. If Big 10 gets 9 at 197, if you don't take ninth, you're out. You're not going. End of story. Game over.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I had mentioned when a casual wrestling fan had asked me, about wild cards, and I said the wild card's a mulligan.
Yeah,
that's what a wild card really is it's a mulligan. You have somebody like Gomez, who's been incredible all year, has a win over the top 10 guys, including the returning NCAA champ Yanni, and he's injured, has a very bad tournament. Mulligan, he's in. Like, that's what a wild card is. It's a mulligan.
It's a mulligan, right? That's what it is.
Who is your story at 49?
My story at 49, my story at 49 was Gomez. I mean, if you're looking holistically at the weight at 149, Sasso wins, and I love Sammy Sasso, but he won. He won without having. Gomez was a story, in my opinion, right? Gomez is banged up. It not only affected what happened at Big Tens. It's going to affect the seeds, and it's going to affect how the bracket plays out at big or at NCAAs.
Underlying storyline for me at 49, and I'm very curious, because some of these things I'm obviously teeing up to get you to go on a rant. This one I don't think we've talked about. Max Murrin, Yaya Thomas, wild situation. I forgot who was going for the takedown, but long story short, they basically ended up off the mat on a basketball court. Yaya Thomas is injured and he's out. Why they don't space things out more, where you have a wrestling mat and there's 4 or 5 feet from the end of the circle to hardwoods, is crazy. And every time something like this, I feel like there's 30 times in a row, it almost happens. And by the grace of God, it doesn't happen. And something like this happens, where there's crazy activity by the edge. It goes off. And now you saw Yaya get hurt. I don't know the severity of it. I hope it's not too bad. I hope he's in NCAAs. But what were your thoughts on that?
I mean, I saw Scott Green from Army, right? He tweeted similarly. And I wanted to, my first knee-jerk reaction when I saw that tweet was this sent from 1995? Because it has been a problem for decades.
Yeah.
This has been going on for decades. And I don't understand it. I don't understand why there's tables right on top of mats. I don't understand. I especially don't understand. You see dual meets sometimes. You see dual meets often where the guy touches the hardwood. You should not be allowed to get to that point. Put mats around it. I mean, especially with a dual meet where you have one mat. I mean, it shouldn't even come to that, right? But it always does. And space is always going to be a problem in wrestling, especially at NCAAs, because it's even worse. NCAAs is one of the worst.
Do you remember, especially when it's elevated, do you remember Big Tens in 2020 in Jersey, when you're walking along the sides and you're it's the edge of the mat, a foot, and then a fall off where the people are walking on both sides. It's oh, this is not good.
Wait till Tulsa. It's going to be tight.
So go back and look. I tweeted a picture last night and I forgot to send a follow-up tweet. I love what the Big 12 does for their championship finals. They give it the NCAA feel. The red carpet, the green carpet. It's great.
Right.
But you see that arena, and I go, ooh. Because somebody was asking, well, we'll talk about a different topic offline. I don't know if I can say this on there. We'll talk about it after. But yeah, that was a scary situation. I hope Yaya's okay. 57. No shortage of talking points here. There's an obvious one. We'll talk about Rob Levi. One, crazy stat. Will Luan has been in 9 overtime matches this year. He's won 6 of them. 3 of them were this weekend.
Yeah. I don't understand it. I don't understand. I mean, he is clearly good, right? I mean, he was ranked highly in high school. He won a freaking cadet world title. I don't understand the lack. To me, 90 times out of 100, lack of scoring comes from a lack of confidence. Because why wouldn't you want to go out there and score? And I just don't understand.
But flip side, you do got to have confidence to pull off all those overtime wins.
I guess you could. I mean, he likes to play Russian roulette. He likes to just take it down to the wire and say, "Hey, it's going to be a coin flip," and I'm okay with whatever happens.
Yeah, he beat Brayton Lee in tiebreakers. Then he beat Chase Saldate, and then
Saldate.
Yep, and then he beat
Chumley.
Yep, crazy. Levi Haynes, baby. Levi Haynes. Here's a kid who they didn't know if they were going to pull his red shirt.
Yeah.
Wins the Big Ten that is the way to win. Now, I know you're going to say, let me finish. That is the way to win a Big Ten championship. You beat a guy who's undefeated. Both guys put it on the line. Like you said earlier, Peyton Robb could have medical forfeited, protect the seed. He didn't. I love that about him.
Levi beat the undefeated number 1 guy in the country was going to be the number 1 seed. That's what Levi did as a true freshman in a season where they weren't sure if he was going to start. I mean, that's how good Levi is right now. I mean, and it's the Big Tens, right? It's not.
And I know you've been preparing for this wait all morning because I saw the takedown video.
Well, no, it's not. I don't have, and that's the problem with ever saying anything on Twitter. At least me. Now, I don't let it affect me. I don't let it affect what I tweet and what I don't tweet because I don't give a shit. But I do know that anything that I say, for some reason, I don't know why me, I know that anything that I say will be read into as if there's an ulterior motive or there's some kind of bias coming from somewhere. I don't know. Is he looking to? Well, Willie's saying this because he likes this guy. Willie's saying this because he don't like this guy. Willie's saying this because he's a favorite of this. His favorite is it? No, I never say anything because I don't like a guy, and I never say anything because I do like a program. My point is, I mean, I'll just say it. I mean, that's a takedown. It's a fucking takedown. That's a takedown. It's a takedown whether it's Peyton Robb. It's a takedown whether it's a Mongolian wrestling a guy from Azerbaijan. That's a takedown. All right? So that call got blown. But I am not saying that Levi doesn't win that match, whether that's a takedown or not. Right? I mean, that was just the end of the first period.
And I have to defend you. I can honestly say that I've seen you tweet something because it's the right thing, and then text me that you're bummed about it. Like something happens, and then you're like your fandom or bias, whatever, is in a text. It's usually not in the tweet. The tweet is usually the tweet will usually get you in more trouble with who you're a fan of than the other way around. You don't really do stuff. You're normally the opposite. But
well, I mean, some guy said, and I knew it was going to be said. Some guy said, "Yeah, that's because you like Nebraska." What day is it? Because today I like Penn State. I'm Penn State Willie. Tomorrow now I love Peyton Robb and hate Levi Haynes. Give me a break.
I thought you were Michigan Willie.
Yeah, last Big Tens I was all Michiganed out, and last week when it was Teskey, every coach in America was saying I was protecting the Brands brothers or I was scared of the Brands brothers. Make up your mind who I love and hate, people. To me, to me, what's right is right, and what's right was that was a takedown. I'm taking nothing away. I'm taking nothing away from Levi Haines. He's a Big Ten champ. He went and earned it. The score was 0-0. He might have won it if it was 2-0.
So I'm never one, never, not never, but I usually don't comment too much on the technicalities. I'm by far no rules expert. So was that a takedown? I'll go 50-50. I don't know. I'm not going to argue either way.
Here's the thing. I am admittedly not a rules expert either. I get stuff wrong. Or I don't get a lot of things wrong because
Tell us how you really feel.
I know what I don't know. If I don't know, I'll ask a question. Somebody please, when you say it's 50-50, what are you seeing that's not a takedown of that? What are you seeing?
Not to make the football, because you did mention football, but it does look like he kind of breaks the ground as soon as he hits, and it looked like his feet were out.
What does breaks the ground mean?
It means he didn't maintain control of the takedown.
Maintain control of the takedown? Where did he lose control?
As soon as they land, when it looks like his feet goes out. This is why I'm not a rules guy, so don't tweet me this crap.
No. Listen,
so when he hits the ground, it looks like his feet come off, and it looks like, picture when
his feet come off of what?
His feet leave the mat.
Listen, absolutely, positively, 100% not. His feet are not even an issue. His feet, and you can certainly see it in the overhead shot, his feet are inbounds 100% when he has control. His feet are not an issue whatsoever.
Takedown.
Right.
By the way, listen, to be fair,
the only thing I can imagine, like I'm trying to imagine what stupid, irrelevant point that they're trying to look at, and maybe, possibly, 100 to the littlest minutia, maybe they're saying, well, Levi has time to react there, and it might not have been a complete control beyond reaction time. Where was it? The reaction time. He didn't escape control within reaction time. So I don't know.
Yeah. So here's my thing. Again, whether it was called or not, I'm obviously glad it was called a takedown, but I'm glad it didn't really. There didn't seem to be a lot of blowback after, because it happened early in the match, because it didn't. Obviously, you can make the argument it affected the outcome, but it happened early in the match. No points were called. It's not like you gave Levi the points and that's how he won. No points were called. And then it went into overtime. And then Levi's takedown in overtime was incredible. There didn't seem to be a lot of pushback like, oh, it cost him the match. And I understand.
Well, I think, and rightfully so, I think that when it's in the first period, it's more acceptable. You have 4 more minutes or 6 minutes or 6+ minutes to go make it happen. Peyton Robb could have went and got it. He didn't, right? And so for that, it's not as unpalatable. I said the same thing. And this is a kid I absolutely love. Hayden Hidley. When there was all that hubbub about, he had a takedown on Nolf. This is the year that Nolf was hurt, right? There was all that hubbub. Hayden Hidley got robbed. I can't believe it. Hayden Hidley got robbed. All the Penn State haters said Hayden Hidley got robbed. I love Hayden Hidley. I would trust him with my son if I had him. I think he's one of the greatest kids I've ever met. It was the first period, guys. It was the first period. Hayden could have went and got another one if he needed to.
You know what annoys me the most about these calls? That the wrestlers get blowback from fans.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Like, remember when Nolf got booed like there was no tomorrow after that match?
Yeah,
as if
right,
he did absolutely anything wrong.
right,
Like,
right.
pull
As
the
if
ref
it's
coming off the mat if you want.
as if it's and because a lot of it's because they wear that white belt, right? A lot of it is because they're from Penn State. Um, they'll get booed a little bit, and Levi will get booed a little bit, but it's not Levi's fault.
Yeah, it's like, and I think I talked to Max Dean about it when he was in the podcast. Like, how do you feel? And he's like, listen, they're passionate fans. What are you going to do? Like,
Yeah.
I'm not doing any, I don't control it. I just have to wrestle. That's what the referee, if a call goes your way, great. You also lose some calls and nobody says two things.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. So 65 was another fun weight. What did you make of it?
Fun from top to bottom. It's interesting. This weight's so packed with great guys, but they can all beat each other. Hamidi, Kennedy, Karchla, Amin. And frankly, I think it could go. No, I don't know.
Do you end with this weight at NCAA's?
Yeah, I think so. Well, let's see. Well, they're going to end it with Spencer, guaranteed. But they could end with Yanni too. They're going to end it with Spencer. I want to listen. You are a brand guy. And I this is slightly off topic. But earlier you were saying about a non-Big Ten guy getting his shine. Did you happen to notice what ad was running during Big Tens? Spartan with Yanni. I was like, that's pretty bold. Like, Yanni is a college athlete, still college wrestling. He's not a Big Ten athlete. And smart move by Spartan Combat putting Yanni on the Big Ten channel.
I can't remember if it was you I was talking about it with, but could you imagine take Yanni and put him at Iowa? What the Iowa fans would do to his brand?
Oh my God.
Like Yanni is as wrestling as one human can be, and he's as talented as one human being can be. He's already a senior level world medalist. He's won different age level world championships. He's a 3-time NCAA champion. It is crazy to me. He's had more success, in my opinion, than Spencer Lee. I don't know that anybody can argue that. And yet, what Iowa's fan base does, Spencer's great wrestler, don't get me wrong, but it is incredible what happens when a fan base gets behind you. And my thing when I'm dealing with athletes, and it's happening more the last couple of years, is that you got to understand that the college fan base is going to fall off the minute you graduate. You cannot, like Spencer Lee, even if he stays with the Hawkeye Wrestling Club, which that's a whole nother episode for another day. Absolutely. About how healthy he's going to be for senior level. But the college fan base, even Iowa, even Penn State, when it comes to the senior level, they fall off. And you have to build your brand, which I think Yanni's doing a very good job of.
Listen, I mean, Spencer is the center of the wrestling universe. Spencer and Yanni, right? They're going to graduate this year. And they don't, neither one of them will be there probably, but they could go to the US Open and 90% of wrestling people would be like, cool, neat, wonderful, right? Not like it is now. As soon as they graduate, different world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I was actually looking at social media followings yesterday because I was, Bo's obviously one of my guys, and I was watching his social traction after the UFC fight. And it's crazy watching his social climb when you get put on that mainstream. And, David Taylor is an Olympic champ, world champ, had to beat Yazdani, everything else, and he's at 450,000 followers. Bo's already at 320,000. It's like what happens, post college is a different world, and that's a whole conversation we can have. But it is crazy. It's going to be interesting watching those careers over the next 4 years.
Yeah.
So whether they go Spencer Yanni, that could be interesting. But I think, like you said, I would personally go 65. That to me seems like
I think wrestling. I think pure wrestling. If you're not taking into account legacy factor, I think 65 is the way to end with. Yeah.
Yeah. What was your story at 65?
My story at 65.
Patrick Kennedy, by the way, going back to freshman, Patrick Kennedy wrestled awesome.
What was my? Yeah, I guess my story. Yeah, my story at 57 was Levi. I mean, that was amazing. Story at 65. What'd you say about Kennedy?
He looked great. I mean, he beat Amin 3-2, and then he lost to Hamady 9-6 in the finals. But I mean, if you're an Iowa fan, you got to be happy with how he wrestled this weekend.
Absolutely. He's been. That's why I was so high on him coming into the year. I mean, there were rumors that he was giving Marinelli everything he could last year, right? Everything Marinelli could handle. There were rumors that Kennedy wanted to be in the lineup. And what that says to me is he's hungry. He's like a dog on a bone, right?
You said that week one. Yep.
And that's why I was so high on him coming to the year. And now, he's a freshman.
You know what was a storyline that I don't...
10 finalist in a loaded weight.
Yeah, loaded weight. Sneaky two things that are kind of related about 65. I thought Karchla looked great. I thought he looked great all weekend. He beats Facundo, who takes a couple of losses and places 7th. I did not see that coming. Loaded weight or not, I did not see Facundo 7th.
I did. I wouldn't have picked Facundo 7th. I would have picked him 5th probably. But here's the problem with Alex. Alex could take 4th at NCAs. He could also go 2-2. He just doesn't have the offense yet.
Yeah.
Doesn't have the offense. And Alex is, I'm not talking about aesthetics, and I'm not even talking about risk and effort, because I think Alex is actively trying to score. I think Alex is looking to score, where Luan isn't. But Alex is a lot like Luan. Luan could make the finals, or Luan could go 2-2. And I think that's what Facundo is.
And I don't, what I also don't want to take away is, because it's funny, if you're saying you would have projected him maybe 5th, the difference in that was Bubba Wilson, who looked great. Right. So he beats Facundo in a close one 3-2, and then he goes to tiebreakers with Amin.
Well, but in my opinion, Alex Facundo is light years better than Facundo. I mean, Facundo is light years better than Bubba Wilson. Certainly his upside is. But when you struggle to score points, you put yourself at risk of losing 1 takedown matches all the time.
Yeah. Yep. No, I think that's right.
So, Facundo is much better, in my opinion, than Bubba Wilson. Luan is much better than a lot of 57s, but he's always going to be in danger. He's always going to be in danger of dropping one.
And I think he's young. I think I tweeted this not too long ago. His offense will pick up. He's in that Penn State room. He's young. Like
100%. 100% agree. Listen, I'm not saying that this is Alex Facundo and this is always going to be Alex Facundo. Yeah. I'm saying he's a freshman trying to figure things out, right? And he'll get there.
Yeah, I think it was a big conversation after the one duel. People were crying there wasn't more offense. I'm like, dude, you gotta understand that a lot of these guys too are young. Same thing with Van Ness over back at 49. Like, he loses 2 close ones to Murrin. He loses a 4-2 match and a 3-2 match.
Listen,
which is also how Murrin typically wrestles.
Facundo took 7th, and that probably has a lot of Penn State's fans. What's the word for it? Not less than optimistic, right? But keep in mind, He beat Karchla, who was third. He was overtime with Kennedy, who was second. Did he beat Amin?
I think he
Beat Amin. Let me see something.
I think he did in overtime.
Yeah. So he took seventh, but yeah, he beat the guy that was fourth. He could beat the guy that was third, and he was overtime with the guy that was second. So
yeah, and he's also like, his loss to Carr was 4-2. He lost in tiebreakers to Patrick Kennedy. So yeah, I mean, as a Penn State fan, I don't think my expectation or hope is any different. I think he's in he's in the toughest
weight
of the year. You can make the argument heavyweight. There's a lot of world level success there too, but I think that 65 is the weight of the year. You got Carr O'Toole. I mean, look at Shane Griffith just took another loss to that same kid from Oregon State again. Like, this weight is not only crazy, anything can happen.
Speaking of, you know what we didn't talk about? I failed to mention it. Younger Bastida took like sixth.
I missed that.
Yeah, he took sixth.
Wow.
So we're talking about tough weights. I think heavyweight's one of the toughest. I think 97 is one of the deepest. And but I think 65 to me is by far the most loaded weight. And Facundo's a freshman and has beaten some of these guys. So I wouldn't be too down on Facundo.
No, I agree.
174. I don't know.
174 was just pretty chalk.
It was chalk. Starocki beat Labriola. I think 2 takedowns to 0. And I think that's probably about to be expected. I think that Labs, there's a really fine line. There's a really fine line between being really good at really good at not getting taken down and being, I don't want to say lackadaisical, but if you're really good at defending finishes, then sometimes your leg defense isn't as good because you're like, I don't care if he gets in, he can't take me down. I can't finish. Right.
What's interesting about Carter too is that he just beat the number 2 kid in the country to win another Big Ten championship. And if you are on social media, Carter talks a big game.
Yeah.
This kid keeps backing it up. I mean, Carter is, and it's interesting because I think after this weekend, my stock would go up for Carter because I think you saw him take out Labriola in a pretty dominant fashion. And then at the same time, Mekhi Lewis, he's already beat him. And Lewis went into tiebreakers. They didn't look that great.
Man, it's there's shows and shows and shows to be done before NCAAs, but who would you take to be in the finals? Labriola or Mekhi?
I think Labriola.
I think so too.
Mekhi didn't impress me much, and I think that Nebraska is rolling. I mean, there were the haters that said, like, after I think we both put out tweets and graphics about going 5 for 5 in the semis. And then unfortunately, 4 out of the 5 were not favorites. And it's like, you have to acknowledge 5 out of 5 in the semis is really good. And also, when you have the final matchups they did, I don't look at that as a negative towards Nebraska. Labs wrestling Carter. I mean, these are not, and you did have Allred beat Max Dean.
But here's the thing, right? You put out 5 for 5 in the semis, and Nebraska got 5 in the finals, and people say, "Oh yeah, but how many are you going to win? Oh yeah, they're going to lose in the final." Listen, the accomplishment in and of itself is impressive. Yeah, they might go 0-5 in the finals. It's the same thing last year. I was sitting with Cody Goodwin at Big Tens, and you too on social media, and I was saying, "Oh my God, Michigan won 7 in a row. Oh my God, they won 8. Oh my God, they won 9." And like Cody was like, yeah, but there's no way they can repeat this at NCAAs. And then they won 10. And I go, oh my God, Cody, now that Michigan just won 12 in a row. And he's like, yeah, but they can't reproduce that at NCAAs. Oh my God, Cody, can you believe they just won 15 in a row? He goes, they can't do that. They can't do that at NCAAs. It's not reproducible. It doesn't matter. They're doing it now, and it's very impressive. And that's what I thought for Nebraska to go through that and get 5. And I'll even say this too about Nebraska. I'll say this about Nebraska. Nebraska put half. Nebraska put half their team in the Big Ten finals. And that is a year after losing Taylor Venz, Eric Schultz, All-American Christian Lance, redshirting Ridge Lovett. They still put half their team in the freaking Big Ten finals. Just incredible, incredible job. I mean, I know that, I got ties to Nebraska, but they're doing an impressive job.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, 174, nothing really outstanding. Like nothing really jumps out at you.
Yeah, no, for sure.
And they only got, this is the least amount of bids that Big Ten got. Big Ten got 7 at this weight. Jackson Turley beat Donnell Washington for the 7th spot, so Donnell is looking for a wild card.
Interesting. 84.
184. Brooks.
Aaron Brooks is so impressive.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Brooks, I believe, got the only major or bonus victory in the entire final? Big Ten finals, which is weird. You have Spencer Lee, Roman Bravo Young.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, with Spencer there and Roman.
Aaron Brooks was the only guy to get a bonus victory. He beat Caleb Romero 12-2, and he did it without a problem.
Romero is not a guy.
By the way, sorry. The tweet this morning, all time.
What?
The guy who mixed up the Romeros.
Oh, you know what? I have not checked Twitter since I tweeted that. I have not checked it. Are people laughing at it?
I was dying. I don't know, but I was cracking up. For those not listening, Willie has an affinity, an infatuation with Demetrius Romero still being in college. And
this is his 8th year.
And so Willie makes a comment, and then somebody else makes a comment about Aaron Brooks beating Romero, and somebody says he's beating a middle-aged man because they got the Romeros mixed up. Innocent mistake. It was just so funny.
Man, I hope people are laughing at him because he should be laughed at. He should be laughed at.
That was definitely a funny one.
But Caleb Romero, not a guy that gives up scores. I mean, he's been in wars with some of the best. But Aaron Brooks he's that good. I thought it was interesting too. This is always, this is the danger of having me on. Is sometimes I'm gonna touch on subjects that most people don't want to talk about, and maybe you don't want to talk about it and just say let's not talk about it. The number of wrestlers that mentioned God afterwards, in their post-match interview, I thought was awesome.
Yeah, David Carr and Brooks. I have a picture. I'm actually going to tweet out in a little bit that I tweeted it last year when right after Aaron Brooks won last year, they both had the prayer headbands on. And there were some people poo-pooing on Carr because he went right up to Brooks. Brooks and Carr are best friends. And the number of Bible studies and Christian content and the amount of time they're professing their faith is incredible. And it's influencing so many others. Like Aaron Brooks is cranking out YouTube videos about his faith and scripture. And I love it. And I think when you see that, and like Carr being there for Brooks last year, right after he takes that heartbreaking loss, you love to see it. You love to see it.
Yeah. And, I understand that there's people that, there's an increasing number of people in this world, especially in this country, that sort of like, oh, religion, oh, religion, oh, religion. Listen, it doesn't matter if you look at it at a true philosophic level. It doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter if you don't believe. And there's these kids are saying faith helps me through this. Faith does this. Faith does that. God does this. If you don't understand that, even if you don't believe that it's a conduit for these kids for their lifestyle and their success, just be happy with that. Just be happy with that.
And
just
by the way, like
accept that is it a positive inclusion in their lives.
One of the things I told both Brooks and Carr this yesterday, wrestling is not a very reward heavy sport. You do it for the love of the sport, and that's pretty much it. And I had told them that I love how vocal they are about their faith. I think God is using both of them. And there's others too, but those two really always stick out to me, how bold they are and how quick they are. You know, they come off the mat and you can tell it's really in their heart. And it's really cool when you get even more. A fish just jumped in my pond when the water is way too cold for fish to be jumping. A bass just jumped in the early March.
What does that
was
mean?
Bizarre. Normally during the winter, fish they
right.
What's the word?
Chill out.
Yeah,
you almost said hibernate. I don't think that's the word.
Yeah, it's not hibernate, but like they chilled the bottom because the top of the water, whatever. You don't see fish jumping in the.
But what does it mean though?
I don't know, but I just saw a monster bass jump out of the corner of my eye.
It sounds like it. We need to get our fishing poles ready.
Wow. So yeah, I love it.
Well, here we had consecutive. Carter Starocki said it. Aaron Brooks said it, and then Silas Allred really went into it.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think it's a really positive thing. I think it's really good for them. I mean, I certainly think it's a discussion point because of how prominent it was.
I love it. All these times when these guys come on my podcast, you'd be surprised the number of them.
You should have Silas on.
I should.
I know you're Penn State guy. Silas's story is really interesting, and he's really in a good place.
Shoot me a text with the group chat. We'll have him on.
Yeah.
I love leveraging this podcast to have faith conversations, and the number of guys that I have on and I bring up their faith and how important it is to them. And then they text me after saying, dude, thank you. Like nobody ever brings that up. Nobody ever gives me the platform. And I've had a couple people poo on it. And I'm like, listen, this is my podcast. You want to start a different podcast and highlight something somebody else isn't doing? Great.
Well, I believe, and but I also went through grad school. I was in grad school for a long time, and the longer you're spending grad school, and the longer you spend around, much more time you spend around academics, the more you're going to come across the atheists, right?
Yeah.
The more you're going to come across people that think that religion is more of a phenomenon than it is actual realistic. And so I know it's a lot of times it gets poo-pooed by these very woke, very erudite, very educated people. But the fact of the matter is, whether you believe or not, you have to acknowledge that there's a lot of successful kids that attribute their success to God being in his life.
Yeah, and if you go to Baschamania.com, and I try to tag episodes with different categories. There's a faith category, and there's 40 different episodes. Colin Moore, Jason Nolf, all these guys, Snyder, Gross, Dayton Fix, Brooks, all the Marinelli. There's so many great stories. So definitely go listen to some of those. All right, 97. Allred takes out Dean.
Yeah. 97. Allred was a story here. And again, a loaded weight. I mean, you got the returning NCAA champ taking 5th, taking 2 losses. Allred beats Dean. Who did he beat in the semis?
You say returning national champ?
Returning runner-up, I'm sorry. Returning national finalist, Jacob Wooden.
Yeah.
So this is a weight class that had 2 national finalists in it, and neither one of them won it, right? And then
crazy.
You have upstart guys like Allred and Smith. Now, Smith beat Allred in the Junior World Team Trials finals, and he takes 3rd. So you got 2 really young guys.
Would you say this is the most
2 veterans?
Would you say this is the most open weight class to win?
Absolutely, positively, the most open weight class. I poo-pooed 97 for 10 years because who's going to win, Snyder or Cox or this guy? I mean, it was like it was 1 or 2 stars and then give me a break, right? And now you can't make up your mind, right? You got Allred, who just won Big Tens but has a bunch of losses. You got Dean. You got Jackson Smith, who just beat Warner. You got Warner. You got Michael Beard. Michael Beard just took a loss to... Who did he take a loss to, Bash? He took a loss.
See that. Where did he lose it? The EIWAs?
He lost to Cardenas 10-9 in EIWA finals. So you got those 2. You got Ethan Laird, who beat Dean. You
undefeated.
Got
Nino Bonacorsi.
Nino Bonacorsi, who beat Trumbull. Trumbull, who beat Trowell. Trowell, whose only loss is to Trumbull. Rocky Elam, Younger Bastida. This weight, as much as we talk about 65, I mean, and even heavyweight with the amount of international experience, 97 is going to have unreal talent not place. Unreal talent.
Yeah, 97 is another weight that if you're doing the NCAA pool, look for the 8, 9, or 10 in this weight.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I don't know how the hell they're going to seed this. Is Nino the 1? Nino's the 1.
He's undefeated conference champ.
Nino's the 1. He has to be. He's the only undefeated. Is Nino the only guy? Is there any? Nino has 0 losses.
Correct. He's the only guy in the weight.
Is there anybody that only has 1 loss? Elam only has 1 loss. Is there anybody else?
But Elam also only has like 11 matches, so that That's might. Right. Bernie Truax was 11-1.
Truax only has 1 loss, correct? But Dean has 2 losses. Warner has multiple losses. Laird might only have 1 loss.
Ethan was 21-1 going into this weekend,
and he won. So there's a bunch of guys with 1, but there's probably 2 lost guys that go ahead. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. 197 seeds are gonna be bonkers.
Yeah, that's gonna be a fun one.
And then 285, which I think we talked about a little bit. I mean, Paris over Kirkfleet, OT. Which, did you think that was a stall?
That to me seemed more like the Carr match, where again, if one guy needs a point and one guy's kind of protecting, I don't know. I don't like stalling at the end of the match. If you're running,
like to me, you know what it seemed like to me, bro. There's no way to ever prove it, but to me, if I'm a betting man, I'm putting my money on that ref not realizing he called Paris for stalling in the first.
That would not surprise me, even
because
when they interviewed Mason,
that looked like a stall you give a guy to warn in case he continues to stall. It doesn't look like this guy needs to be hit for a point.
Even Mason forgot. He said after, he's like, I was kind of confused, but whatever. He's like, I didn't remember being warned. So yeah. I that would not surprise me whatsoever. I do think that heavyweight is going to come down to Paris and Kirk again at NCAAs. I think looking at the way the bracket shakes out, I just, or could potentially shake out.
Well, because here's the thing. Here's the thing. Mason's the 1, Kirk's the 2, and Cassioppi's the 3. So we almost don't have to look at matchups, right? Like one could say, well, maybe Schultz is a tough matchup for Kerkvliet or Cassioppi, and maybe he is. But we don't have to worry about that because it's Kirk and Cass are going to be on the same side, and we know how that goes right now.
Yep.
We saw it 3 times, so.
Yeah. So it's going to be, that'll be a fun wait too, because you have guys, we'll do it a preview show. We'll talk about it, but there's so many, the guys like Hendrickson that aren't tested all year, but are very, very talented, could really just go on a tear.
Yeah. Yeah. So outside the Big Ten, let me just hit on a couple of notes that I have on guys that are wrestling really good. Whitcraft 125. Whitcraft took 3rd after coming in ranked 33rd. Kaler won the Pac-12s, beating Brandon Courtney. So that was pretty good. Aaron Nagao at 33, Lucas Bird, Wyatt Henson taking 3rd. Kyle Reen beat Mickey Philippi in ACC finals.
Yeah, I had tweeted that out. He also, who'd he beat just before that too? It was worth no.
Did he beat? I got it right here. No, did he beat? Say exactly who it is because I'll bring it up.
I tweeted out that what a day Latona. He had. Yeah, he knocked off Latona and then that win. So that was. Yeah. That
Here's
was
an
impressive.
interesting one. Emilio Izagari. This is going to be tough, JB, because Emilio Izagari. Vasquez apparently got hurt. Izagari comes in. He beats Brock Hardy. They put him in the conference tournament, and he makes the finals. But the Pac-12 only brings 1, and he lost to Cleveland Belton. So Izagari might have had like a 2-match season. It's possible he gets a wild card. We'll see. But Cleveland Belton won.
Give him the mulligan.
Pac-12. Give him the mulligan. 149. Mitch Moore, another Sooner. He took 3rd. That was a good performance by him. But Dylan Chappell from Bucknell beat Doug Zaff in the semifinals.
I saw that.
That was a good one. 157. I thought Chumbley had a good tournament. 165. Olguin again. Olguin again beats Griffith. And then the EIWA's Ramirez again beats Monday. So maybe Ramirez not getting the love that he deserves, right? He has 2 wins now. 2 wins now over NCAA runner-up from last year, Quincy Monday. 174. Cade Devos took 3rd. And Take Piccolo had a good tournament, both from Big 12. 184. I didn't really have much at 84 other than Pinto. Pinto is exciting.
We were texting about him, yeah.
He maybe sort of kind of blew the match against Romero. But Lenny's going to be one who sort of teases you this year. I thought it from Jump Street. From I had no. He's going to win some big ones in some big ways, and he's going to lose. And he's going to lose some.
And it was only 4-3. Like, that was a close match with Romero.
The thing is that Lenny's a redshirt freshman, but he's also a guy first of all, Lenny got hurt and it required surgery. He was not allowed to be on the mat his whole redshirt year. So what the guys at Nebraska tell me is like, Willie, he's like a true freshman. It's like, this is his first year.
Yeah.
and he's learning really fast, and he's really good, and he's really talented, and he does everything the right way. But he's green. He's really green. So yeah, Pinto 197. Silas was a sort of overachiever. Luke Serber taking third in the Big 12. In a weight that has younger Bastida and a couple other guys. Of course, Rocky Elam, who he beat earlier this year. Serber taking third was a big one. And
you know who wrestled a tough match that was chalk, but I think it was good, was O'Connor beating Bryce Andonian 6-5.
Yeah.
Andonian throws everything in the kitchen sink at you, and I thought O'Connor just wrestled it good.
I think that Andonian's a tough guy to place, a tough guy to put in the hierarchy of 157. I really don't know what he is at the weight. Number one, because he's new to the weight. Last year being at 49, this year wrestling a very abbreviated schedule. And so I don't know exactly how he fits. He causes everybody all kinds of problems. Right? Like, what does a Levi Haynes versus Andonian matchup look like? I don't think Andonian beats the guys that are. I don't think he beats Rob. I don't think he beats O'Connor.
But when or not, it's going to be fireworks. Which is what's so fun with him. Like last year, his matches were a blast with Gomez, and he's such a fun guy. And when you take that many shots, I feel like you can sneak a win here or there with a guy who might be a better wrestler or might be more skilled, whatever. The guy just takes so many chances. He lets it fly every time.
And it's easy to root for him because he's so active. And it's also really refreshing because it's a guy who believes in himself and is also clearly having fun.
Yeah.
Right?
What did you think of the team race? It's even as a Penn State fan, I do wish the team race was nobody talked about the team race yesterday. Like Big Tens, it was, and even at the other conferences, it feels like NC State won like 5 in a row, Missouri, like there's a lot of.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. Virginia Tech has been very good recently, and even a couple years ago, UNC had a pretty deep squad. That's super impressive. Even though it's a small conference, 5 in a row is really impressive.
What do you think of combining some of these conferences? I don't know, never happened. It's just some of these, like you look at some of these brackets with like 6 guys. It's like,
well, I don't think I think ACC is fine because it's small, but there's a lot of strong teams.
There's no doubt.
What I would like to see is I would like to see. I wish, if I had my wish, some of the teams in the Big 12 would go to the Pac-12. I think that like Utah Valley should be Pac-12. I think Northern Colorado should be Pac-12. I think Cal Baptist should be Pac-12.
You want to go down the USC and UCLA bunny trail?
Who the hell knows what we get there? I that would be a dream come true if they started, but you know what? Simultaneously, it would be a dream come true if they had to add, and it's also a nightmare if they don't. Because if they start having special rules for special schools,
those listening, real quick to interject, for those listening who might not know what we're talking about, USC and UCLA are moving to the Big Ten next August.
Right.
And there's talk that they might have to add a wrestling program or add programs.
Yeah.
So it's obviously wrestling.
If USC and UCLA don't have to add, now you're going to have 16 teams, 2 without. Does the rest of the other 14 teams say, maybe we should cut wrestling? That's scary. That's scary as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think so for sure. Are you next topicing Penn State to win in 2 weeks?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. I
Are
wish
you?
it was more of a team race. Yeah, obviously.
Hey, let's talk
But
about Oregon State, though. Oregon State balled out. They won the Pac-12. Let's
I
just go.
gotta I gotta give a shout out to somebody. Jack at Wrestling Hypes on Twitter tweets me, don't sleep on the Beavs to take home the Pac-12 title. Tweets me later. Let's go.
Yeah, they wrestled tremendous. And remember, they took their lumps at like collegiate duels, right?
Yep.
Um, and so they had a really strong NCAAs last year. I mean, they were balling out. Kaler AA, Willits AA, the other Willits almost AA and beat David Carr. They were just balling out, and they lost the Willits. They lost a couple pieces. It looked like, all right, now they're going to be hurting for a little bit. They took some lumps early in the year. Now Chris Pendleton, it's like, okay, he has this, he's making it happen again at the end of the year, where Matt Olguin is beating Shane Griffith twice.
Was that match the difference in Oklahoma State beating Stanford? I think there was a 10-point differential between Oregon State and Stanford. 123.5 to 113.5.
Yeah.
So Shane wins, Stanford wins, right?
Wow. I didn't even realize that. But yeah, that was the final differential. It was 10 points. So it very well could have been, or something close. But regardless, Oregon State is clicking at the right time.
Yeah. Pendleton knows a thing or two about that.
Yeah. Yep. So, yeah, man, it's like, I think I was going to take second. I just don't see they have Spencer Lee, who's about a lock, Real Woods, who should be a surefire finalist, and then so many other bullets. There was only 2 teams to qualify 10. That was Iowa and Virginia Tech. And so I was going to have a couple sure things in Spencer and Real, and then essentially a sure thing, a top 5 finish minimum from Cassiope.
Yeah.
And so I just really feel like I was sort of locked in at 2. Now, I do think there's a path that Iowa does not take 2. There is a doomsday scenario where Warner has a bad tournament in a loaded weight. Assad doesn't place. Nelson Brands doesn't place. I think there's a path for Iowa to not take second. But pre-tournament projections, I think you have to have Iowa there. And who the hell usurps them? What team do you think could usurp Iowa?
Nebraska.
Nebraska would have to be perfect.
I mean, you're talking in that situation if Iowa has a bad tournament and somebody else has a good tournament.
Well, if I told you that Teskey doesn't place, Brands doesn't place, Seabrick doesn't place, and Assad doesn't place. If I told you that those 4 didn't place, you wouldn't think I was crazy, right?
Do you know who at the beginning of the year I thought would crack the top 3?
Who's that?
Cornell.
Yeah.
They've got a couple injuries now, but Cornell has such a strong squad. When you've got Yanni, Vito, you've got some of these guys that can do.
Well, Yanni, Vito, and now Ramirez has 2 wins over Monday. The problem with Cornell really is that, well, losing Lowe hurt.
Yeah.
Fernandez, they lost him. He was probably a fringe guy, but the problem with Cornell is their studs, other than Yanni, right? So their locks are Yanni and Vito for major points. Their other pieces are at the worst weights, at the best weights, right? Ramirez at 65, and now Cardenas, who just beat Beard, at 97.
Folka too, 74.
Okay, yeah. Yeah. So I mean, if Cornell would max and I would doomsday, then I could see Cornell jumping them.
Yeah. I mean, the point differential you're talking to between like a Penn State and a Cornell is crazy with how far out Penn State is this year.
Yeah, I just mean for second, you know.
Yeah.
For second. I mean, can there be any drama for second? There's not going to be any drama for first. Can there be any drama for second? And I think I think there could be, but one would have to max and one would have to min. I think what you're really looking at is the podium finish, which is who can take fourth and who's going to be, you know, taking fifth and kicking, punching the wall.
One more wild card. What about Missouri?
Missouri, yeah.
If you have O'Toole make the finals, if you have Rocky make the finals, Zach Elam should place high. They've got a tough squad.
Yeah, you can get points with Mahler, you can get points with Hart.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can and Noah Certain, you can get points with him because frankly, 125 is not great. And I'm not saying that to disrespect Noah Certain. I'm just saying you don't typically put Noah Certain in that high point scorer category, but at a weight like 125, that's certainly within play.
Yep. Yeah, no, for sure. It'll be fun doing a full preview show. I know Chenzo
that's what I was going to ask. What's your schedule? What do we do? What's next?
Well, we're gonna have the next week Wednesday the Mulligans come out. When do brackets come out? I always forget.
I always forget too. But they come out this week, do they not?
I think they do. I think they come out like the week before.
They don't. Mulligans don't come out till Wednesday. I thought they came out Tuesday.
Let me see what it was last year.
I don't know, but they need to come out
March 9th. Last year it was Wednesday, yeah.
But I just got the news because I inquired. At larges will be tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, tomorrow. Nice. Tuesday afternoon. There you go.
That's what I thought. Tuesday, Wednesday. It goes Tuesday at larges. I knew that. I had a pretty good idea that
basically as soon as
brackets come out a week before.
As soon as the brackets come out, that's when we do the preview show.
I might go to Tulsa. I might go to Tulsa right now.
You're gonna need to camp out to get a seat.
I got no. I got a A, I got a press pass, and B, I pulled the trigger on a sweet ticket.
You might have to DM me text me the details.
What that. You need one?
I have a press credential, but I really want to be in a suite.
I wasn't even sure that you were going. Weren't you on the fence?
I'm still on the fence.
Yeah.
I've got everything lined up to go.
I'll just say it. I'm staying in a suite with Oklahoma State people.
That might be tough for me. Although, you know what? They're a client of mine. Cowboy Wrestling Club. Client of mine. I might have to
Dude, you
Clay
got
an email.
Clay, I'm in Clay's suite.
Yeah, I just put two together.
Yeah. Come on, dude. Stay with me.
All right. I'll let you know. We're going to figure this out. All right, Willie, that was a 2-hour spectacle.
It'll be great. It'll be great when Dayton and Roman are in the final.
Oh, my God. Oh, man, that would be something. I like Dayton so much. Roman's obviously my guy. That's one of those weights. It's like
there's not a tougher one for me to sit through than that.
Yeah, it's tough.
I love Roman. I mean, I might be closer with Dayton than any wrestler in the country. Me and Dayton are pretty tight.
Yeah. All right, Willie. Well, I'm sure we'll be doing this a couple times.
Yeah.
Next couple of weeks.
All right. I will. You realize now that I will be incessantly texting you to stay in the suite.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I'm gonna call you about something else too in a few minutes.
All right, brother.
All right, buddy. See ya. Thanks, everybody.
And the beat goes on.